Not certain. I must say this, just because of the scepticism developed over the last few years, I'm not certain that this so-called energy crisis is all it's cocked up to be. I'm not certain about it. Firstly, in France, there is no price-rise energy crisis. Prices rose by 4% in France. In Britain, they've gone up 250%. But now they're saying everyone's not going to be able to pay electricity and so on, and then the government's going to make this compensation and so on. I think they're going to try and make that a sort of scapegoat. The energy crisis in 1973, 74 was declared to be, that's the crisis that happened, right? Yeah. The energy crisis. Not the crisis of the system of society and the profit-making organisation of production under capitalism, but the crisis of energy. Now, Boris Johnson, I heard him last week, and he was saying the crisis in Britain, in energy crisis, is caused by Vladimir Putin. That's what they've been saying. That's what they say not only in Britain, but all around Europe. The crisis in Europe is caused by the war in Ukraine. That's the idea. And of course, you may remember, if you look back and you can check the chronology of this, the COVID crisis, where they were just about to mandate compulsory vaccines in Germany, Austria, Canada, and elsewhere, Britain in certain sectors, in France in the healthcare sector they already did it, in Britain in the care home sector they did it. What about the prisons? What were they doing there?
It wasn't compulsory.
It wasn't compulsory. So in any case, they were pushing this type of, totalitarian bio-dictatorship, and then suddenly it disappeared. 1 minute you're all supposed to wear masks and get jabbed on pain of losing all your freedom, and the next minute it was all gone. And in fact, what indicated it to me was on the 19th of February or the 18th this year, so like 10 days before Russia intervened in Ukraine, there was a change on the government website, advice about COVID, and it said basically no one could travel to England at that time unless they'd been vaccinated or unless they went through a quarantine, except if you came from Ukraine. By the way, in Ukraine hardly anybody's vaccinated. There's about 20% vaccination in Ukraine. People don't trust the government. Quite rightly, because it's a kitchen of thieves. It's a gangster regime. Called democratic, but it's a gangster regime. It's run by mafia gangs, financed by America, and by Germany and England, but mainly by America. And then, of course, that doesn't make Russia any better. Russia's also gangster. It's not financed by America, but it's gangster sort of capitalism with a veneer of democracy as well. Because they've all declared Russia to be a dictatorship. Only a few years ago they were saying it's democracy. Now apparently it's suddenly turned into a dictatorship. But then on the day that COVID disappeared, the war started. Terrible shape. We're very unlucky in modern times that things happen like synchronously like that. You know what I mean? One goes, the next comes. Terrible shape. And now the world economic crisis is about to drag humanity downwards. I read the stats this morning, and it said, in the last 2 years, so the great, when the whole world, the governments, the rulers, they were all concerned about your health. They were really worried about your health. Yeah. They gave you masks.
They are concerned about
they
their
give you
money,
jab.
that's all.
They give you a jab, they give you a mask, and they tell you to stay at home. They were really concerned about humanity. And but unfortunately, in any time when you're caring for someone, you're not caring for someone else. You know what I mean? Sometimes you put a lot of attention on someone, the other person falls by the wayside. So unfortunately, according to Oxfam, 238 million people have been pushed to the edge of starvation. Unfortunately, this is just we just weren't paying attention to that question. And now they're saying, I read in the news, some of you might have seen it as well, everyone's getting monkeypox. They're all getting monkeypox. I haven't seen a study, I'd like to see a study, to see how many of the people who've got monkeypox were vaccinated. I'd like to see that study, but I haven't seen anybody talk about that yet. There's probably no connection whatsoever. Well, then there's people getting polio. Apparently polio's on the rise. The nice thing about polio is you're all familiar with it. You know, not the iron lung box, but you're all familiar with polio because polio is an asymptomatic illness for 99, or asymptomatic carriers, 75%. And we all know that COVID is also asymptomatic carriers, 90 odd percent, or 80 odd percent, or 70 odd percent. So it's familiar with that. Now they're saying they're testing the shit, you see. You have these experts, scientific experts in England, now in Europe and America, who are going through the sewage, right? They get a little bowl of sewage, and then they pour it out, and then they do tests on it to see what's in it. And then they say, COVID, SARS-CoV-2, we found it, we did a PCR test on this bit of sewage, and there's SARS-CoV-2 there. By the way, they found SARS-CoV-2 in Spain in the spring of 2019, and in Brazil in the spring of 2019, and in northern Italy in the summer of 2019. Long before Wuhan, they found it in the sewage. Now they're finding polio in the sewage. And they're saying all children must now get a polio vaccination because you're all going to die otherwise. Or perhaps we need to lock down or something of that nature. So the ground is certainly prepared for what they call the new pandemics, you know. And the new pandemic is supposed to come because it's hot now. It's hot. You know, you don't appreciate it, you laugh at that. You look like you come from a hot country.
Huh?
You look like you come from a hot country.
Sorry, say that again.
I say you look like you come from a hot country.
Yeah, of course now.
So you can easy poo-poo it. Look at us English, we sweating our balls off. Mate. You think it's alright? No. We don't have those clothes either.
Yeah.
How much do you think we go and buy those clothes? We've got no money to pay for energy.
I sell some of them. Come to my website. I'll buy some of them. I sell some of these clothes.
Is that right? Well, there you go. Look, he's a walking advertisement. So it's got hot here now, and they're saying as it gets hot, animals will go a bit nutty. There was a thing in a paper in the BBC this week saying that animals are getting aggressive and attacking people, right? Because they're encroaching on the habitat. You know, some bears, in Japan, some monkeys, some bears, things like that, encroaching on people and then having a fight with them. You know? And apparently this is caused by climate change, like everything else in the world. Yeah, everything in the world, because it is hot today, you don't deny it. And I come to Speaker's Corner, I can tell you something that happens when it gets hot at Speaker's Corner. People go a bit mad. I come to Speaker's Corner and there'll be one or two people who I know who've got some mental problems. They'll start screaming and shouting. Sometimes there's one guy I remember, he used to come around at Speaker's Corner on a really hot day and his skin would be peeling off. And then he'd start screaming and shouting and it was incoherent. And that's an effect of climate change. It is. So, now I don't know if climate change is caused by CO2. I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not that type of scientist. There are a lot of scientists who tell you it is. I think 99.99999% of all scientists agree that it is caused by CO2. So how can I challenge that? After all, science has always historically been decided by how many votes you get. You know, it's like politics, isn't it? And that's why during the pandemic, you had this marvellous circumstance where Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock, who've got fantastic degrees in philosophy, politics and economics, became scientists of the first order. They were on television behind a lectern. In fact, they had 3 lecterns generally. They'd have the Prime Minister with his degree in classics, in Greek classics that is. Then you had a couple of guys who work in the pharmaceutical industry. One's called Chris Whitty, another called Patrick Vallance. They got a lot of shares in AstraZeneca and Pfizer and stuff like that, just by accident. And they were standing there telling us, look, next slide please. And the Prime Minister, whenever he was asked a question by 3 journalists who were allowed into the room, and by 1 member of the public who was on the screen by remote control. And of course we all know that because we all went remote control, right? You know, we had work by remote control, we had schooling by remote control, we even had masturbation by remote control, right? 2 years of incessant remote control. So everyone got familiar with it. Now they're preparing the ground for a new market. What's the new market? Anybody seen Mark Zuckerberg? I saw a video, just on the side, I saw a video of Mark Zuckerberg yesterday telling his staff not to get vaccinated. It's strange, given the fact that if you go on Facebook and you post the words he used, then you get a big warning underneath, you'll be deleted from Facebook if you say this. So Facebook can't defend what Facebook says. So Mark Zuckerberg, I saw his video called Metaverse. You know when they changed the name from Facebook to Meta, he put out a video. And anybody seen this video? It's a seminal video in the history of technology. And basically what he was saying was, he had some members of staff, it was an illustration of our wonderful future, which he's creating for us, having netted us all together, I think 2-3 billion people around the world connected through Facebook. And many people use it as the main means of expressing themselves or communicating, you know. They say, oh, my mum's really ill, you know, my brother's just died, I've got cancer, how are you, I'm in love with you, I hate you, fuck off, blocking you, it's all on there, right? But apparently the new world is going to be Meta, and Meta means you go online, so let's say there's 7 people here, like Jan here, he doesn't want to look like he's 80, well, I'm 80 what? He wants to chat to a young girl, so he presents himself as a 22-year-old man, and the image, the avatar is there in 3D, where you're also there. You present yourself as a 40-year-old man from Nigeria.
Selling my jacket.
Selling your,
my
not your jacket. No. If you sell that jacket, you have to have someone make it, right? But in this new world, the brave new world, we don't want to see you naked, even your avatar. So you wear a pretend one that fits your 3-dimensional avatar on the internet, and you try and sell one of them to him, right? A copy, an NFT of your jacket. And if you're getting early, you can corner the bloody market. You know, there's a friend of mine, she bought some of these, she owned one of these monkeys, you know. I can't remember what it's called, some monkey thing. It's a picture of a monkey, really simple crude drawing of a monkey, right? And she got this, I don't know, 10 years ago. She was always unemployed, always homeless, always having no money. Suddenly she posts on Facebook, I've just made £1.5 million and I'm buying a house in the countryside. Then she showed this huge house she was buying in the countryside. Be great for me and my kid. And she owned a couple of these monkeys, right? And sold them for a couple of £1 million, £1.5 million. So that's the world they want you to enter. That's the world of speculative accumulation. Because when capitalism is incapable of making money by investment in genuine commodities for profit, then what it does is it wanders off into the stratosphere. Bitcoin, you know, get one of them in 2001, and it would have cost you 50p. Now it's £20,000. You muppet! Why didn't you buy then? Hey? Muppets. And so, what's that?
Bitcoin wasn't out in 2001.
It was. Okay, 2010, whatever it was. I had some myself. And then I lost the bloody code. You had to put a 15 or 20 letter code to remember the bloody thing. I can't even remember a 6-number code. Oh, shut up, you pedant. You pedant. You think we're not discussing bitcoins. Bitcoins are just a specific phenomena in order to facilitate the discussion of the Marxist theory of fictitious capital, as you should know. And the fictitious capital becomes dominant, you see, during periods like now. So that's what Meta's all about. It's to suck you in, and they want, because they you know, grooming gangs, you know. Tommy Robinson goes on about grooming gangs in Rotherham. And then there's grooming gangs in the Catholic Church, and that's but of course, what we've had in the last 2 years is grooming gangs on the internet. In other words, Google, Facebook, Twitter, what else is there? Amazon Prime,
Microsoft,
Pornhub. He told me about that. All these type of things, they're all on the internet trying to grab the minds of the children. And so the children have been sitting there on online friendship, online schooling, online work. They were grooming you for this new psychotic world. And of course, it would be very beneficial if you can't afford to pay anything anymore. Then if you sit at home on a computer, and imagine they pay you to be on that computer, so they monitor you, observe you. They might even pay you a bit for your, you know, for the design of your.
My dress.
Yeah. And then the problem is this. You know, there's a lot of talk about the rights of people to their identity. You know, what's your pronouns? What do you mean you don't know? What are you? Born in the 23rd, 20 BC? You got to know your pronouns.
Pronouns, yeah.
You got to know your. There's a lot. How many are there? No, how many pronouns are there that people use now? You might want to. You know, one of these turfists. Huh?
Born before the age of madness.
You were born before the age of madness, but here you are. We'll see what we can do about that. Right, so you got she, them, him, her, it, stuff like that, and you're supposed to adjust. But then what happens, you know? Where you going, mate? Where you going, eh? So what happens? What you doing, eh? What you doing? So, well, you're being steady on it, aren't you, look? So, you should block them. Come on, nurses to the fore.
Isn't that sexual harassment? Riding a bike.
Exactly, she looked at my bum.
With her bum up out
Looking
there.
at my
in
bum
front
when
of
cycling
men.
past, that's right.
99%
That's right. I feel
men.
violated. But the point being this, you will then be violated on the internet. So you go onto the internet and you present yourself, and it literally honestly, look at what Zuckerberg put out. The first video about metaverse, and he's got like 7 people on the internet, none of them appearing as human beings. All of them appear as weird monsters floating in space. There's one that looks a bit like an elephant, but he's square, floats in space and he's brown, and goes, "Hey there, how are you today?" And then they're all talking to that avatar like it's a real thing. And then they're doing work together as these personalities. So you'd have to ask yourself whether this is grooming the future generations to be something like, anybody read this book by E.M. Forster? It's called The Machine Stopped. And he wrote it in 1909. And in there he describes a world in which human beings are pale as a sheet, stuck in a hexagram under the earth about 2-3 miles down, and they communicate with each other by machine, and they have about 4,000 or 5,000 friends each. I've got 5,000, by the way. 4,000 or 5,000 friends each, and then they communicate with each other through these screens. And of course that's where we are, isn't it? You know, even at Speaker's Corner, here we are, giving a speech, but it's on the screen. It's being streamed.
Can I ask you
But
a
of course,
question?
do they turn this then into an avatar? And I'm floating around in cyberspace with my own avatar. You see, one of the phenomena at Speaker's Corner is, what people come and complain about Speaker's Corner, there's not enough people speaking. And they see some people standing around here, and they've got no experience in oratory, but they discuss with each other, and they've got 50 cameras on them, right? And 7 million people watching, right? I mean, what's the matter when they don't have a life other than that? So then, the point being then, you can have this in cyberspace. You have an avatar, like the shape of a box, that looks like an elephant, that's got 7 legs, floats around and starts talking, and people are trying to buy these things from him, buy these NFTs and that from him. And that's the mindset they want people to be locked into. Because they locked out the world for 2 years. They made the safe space, buzzword again, sitting behind a computer, looking out of the screen and communicating with the outside world, and possibly adopting another persona and another character to present themselves to the rest of the world. Well, does that persona have its own pronouns? That's the big question. And if you can buy those pronouns, what will they be? And what about if someone touches that monster on the internet in an unwanted fashion? Is that rape or sexual assault?
There's already been some cases where
Well, there you go.
about being harassed in the metaverse.
Well, I'm sure you can be harassed in the metaverse. I'm certainly harassed on YouTube. I've got someone going around London, there's a guy I do the Karl Marx walking tour, for those who don't know. Buzz, buzz, promotion, advert. Now, when I do the Karl Marx walking tour, I looked up Karl Marx walking tour for my ego on the internet, and then I found this picture of some right-wing guy, Tommy Robinson supporter, going around London going, "Oi, if you see any of these Karl Marx walking tours, right, advertised, right, you splash a bit of water on it, and then you get a knife to it, and you scrape it off, like that." And then someone else at Speaker's Corner, someone who I knew reasonably well, she started doing the same thing. She suddenly decided Karl Marx is a Satanist, therefore I'm Satan, therefore she has to go around trying to take posters and stickers down. Of course, I don't put posters and stickers up, because I know that's illegal. And it's illegal because we have to have a fair playing field. If I put up a poster somewhere, for example, you know, on the back of that sign over there, then I'd have an unfair advantage against like Fiorucci and Gucci and companies like that have to pay for advertising space in the underground. And you know, how can they tolerate that? You can't have unfair competition. And so really, you know, you can't have these posters and stuff. And I don't agree with putting posters and stickers up. It's a terrible thing. In case anybody from the council is watching this, just to make quite clear. Having said that, that right-wing guy decided he had to attack the Karl Marx walking tour, while simultaneously he made a 1-hour video about a Karl Marx walking tour. So that's the kind of madness that we get around in the world today. People are touchy, edgy, and ready to explode. We had it over Brexit, we had it over vaccination. You know, I mean, people are going, "Don't come around my house! Have you been vaccinated?" There's people getting advert on the internet. Flat share for rent. People go around there, they say, "Have you been vaccinated?" So they're not coming in the door then. Well, how are you going to rent a room in a flat if you can't even get in the frigging door? It's pretty difficult. Some people doing the other way around as well, you know. If you've been vaccinated, stay clear. Frigging, what do you call it?
Can I ask you a question?
Cheddar.
What is all this about gender fluidity that they are teaching children?
What is it about?
I don't
Well,
understand.
the idea is this. The idea is that people's gender is associated with their own self-identity. And their own self-identity is not connected with their physical condition. So, in other words, if you've got a penis or a pair of boobs and a vagina, probably not all together, but if you've got those things, then it identifies you like that. So that's what the lady over there is saying, male and female, right? But there are other people, of course, they've always been people who are sort of, you know, in between here, like an androgynous male or a butch female. And so now it's become quite common, people say, "I will change," because you can physically alter through plastic surgery the condition of a person, and therefore you can cut their penis off and turn it into something that looks a bit like a vagina. Then you can say, or people say, well, that then becomes a female. And then people have said, well, sorry? No, I said some people are saying that. That's what's being said. Sorry?
They said they are wrong.
I said that's what they're saying.
That's what they're saying.
He's asking me what it's about.
What about the men in dresses over there? Are they women?
Well, it's for, I mean, that's clothing, isn't it?
Well, the issue in America, they said, well, these men who are wearing dresses, like they're women.
In America?
Are you women? Say no,
Well,
of
it's
course
true.
not. This
It's
is
true.
what
I mean,
a man wears.
he's pretty close to wearing a dress as well.
Contingent, you know, like,
Well,
if you want to
clothing.
wear-
Quite right.
if you want to
I
wear
think clothing's irrelevant.
or a kilt,
Clothing is
I think
irrelevant.
clothing's irrelevant. I think you're right.
After all, the Scottish people tie skirts, and nobody passed an
no
eye.
one says they're suddenly a woman.
The question then
Scots
becomes.
wear
The
skirts.
question then becomes. Can you just identify with whatever you want to identify with? And there has been, it certainly has been, a lot of dynamics pushed through the internet towards the idea that you can be whatever you want to be,
The question-
regardless of your biological condition.
It could be comical if we are talking about adults. To be pushing it down people who are under 10.
Sorry?
I mean, it's okay to have a laugh among adults, but in school, what's going on? Oh, they're acting some drama.
Whoa, get in there.
Some drama.
I lost all the audience. That's how good. Look, all that side.
That's it.
Scattered to the wind.
That's it.
Scattered to the wind. And they're not even going to have a fight. Guarantee you.
That's disruption. That's disruption. What if I